Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the very edge of time itself, where every excuse you ever made suddenly loses its power and every hidden intention rises to the surface without permission. Imagine a moment so certain, so unavoidable that Allah Himself swears by it before saying anything else. This is not a warning meant for some distant people of the past. This is not a message softened by symbolism or metaphor. This is a direct confrontation with your future, delivered with absolute clarity. Before going any further, take a second to reflect and stay with this message until the end. Thank you for watching Islamic Insight channel. From which country are you watching this video? Let us know in the comments, and if you love Islam and reminders that awaken the heart, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss what truly matters. Surah Al-Qiyamah begins in a way that is deeply unsettling because it does not ease into the subject. Allah does not begin by explaining, comforting, or narrating. He begins with an oath, and in the Quran, when Allah swears by something, it is because what follows is of extreme importance. He swears by the day of resurrection itself, as if that day is already standing in front of us, fully formed, waiting for its moment to unfold. The effect of this opening is deliberate. It grabs the heart before the mind has time to wander. It forces the listener to confront a reality they spend most of their life trying to forget. This day is not a theory. It is not a story. It is not a distant possibility. It is a fixed appointment that has never been delayed and will never be cancelled. Then, without pause, Allah swears by something even closer to us than the future, something that lives inside us every single day. He swears by the self-reproaching soul, the inner voice that questions, regrets, accuses, and unsettles us after we do wrong. This is the soul that feels heavy after sin, restless after disobedience, and uneasy even when the world applauds us. Islamic scholars explain that this soul is proof planted within the human being, a constant reminder that we are not morally empty creatures. Even when a person denies Allah with their tongue, this soul continues to whisper the truth. It criticizes us when no one else knows what we have done. It reminds us of promises broken, prayers delayed, and opportunities wasted. Surah Al-Qiyamah links this inner struggle directly to the day of resurrection, teaching us that accountability is not foreign to human nature. It is built into us. The discomfort we feel after wrongdoing is a preview, a warning, a mercy before a much greater reckoning. What makes this opening even more powerful is that Allah does not describe the disbeliever as someone who lacks intelligence or awareness. Instead, He exposes a deeper issue. The human being knows, the human being feels, the human being understands far more than they admit. The self-reproaching soul is not there to torture us. It is there to guide us back before it is too late. Every time it speaks and we silence it, we push ourselves further from the truth that Surah Al-Qiyamah is forcing us to face. Then the surah shifts, and the question that has echoed through human history is placed directly on the tongue of the doubter. Does the human being really think that we will not assemble his bones? This is not asked because Allah needs an answer. It is asked to expose the arrogance behind the doubt. The people who rejected resurrection during the time of the Prophet Muhammad were not denying creation. They were denying reconstruction. They mocked the idea that once the body decays and turns to dust, it could ever be brought back again. To them, scattered bones meant the end of the story. Allah responds immediately and decisively, saying not only that He can bring them back, but that He can perfectly restore even the fingertips. This detail is not random. Classical scholars pointed out that fingertips represent precision, uniqueness, and fine detail. Every human being is distinct, and resurrection will not be a vague recreation. It will be exact. Identity will not be blurred. Accountability will not be generalized. You will not be resurrected as a version of humanity. You will be resurrected as you, with your full identity, your full record, and your full awareness. This answer crushes the illusion that resurrection is improbable. If Allah created you from nothing the first time, restoring you from remains is not a challenge at all. The doubt, then, is not logical. It is emotional. It is rooted in resistance, not reason. And Surah Al-Qiyamah does not stop there. It goes deeper, exposing why people truly deny the hereafter. It explains that the human being wants to continue sinning without interruption. Denial becomes a shield, a way to delay responsibility. If there is no resurrection, there is no judgment. If there is no judgment, then desire rules without limits. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths in the surah, because it does not allow the listener to hide behind claims of confusion or uncertainty. It reveals that for many people, disbelief is not about evidence, it is about convenience. Accepting resurrection would mean accepting restraint. It would mean accepting that every private action matters. It would mean accepting that life is not owned, but entrusted. Surah Al-Qiyamah tears away the illusion that denial is neutral. It shows it for what it really is, a choice driven by the desire to live freely without consequence. And yet, even in this exposure, there is mercy. The surah is speaking now, not later. The warning comes before the meeting. The reminder comes while repentance is still possible. The self-reproaching soul is still active. The bones are still alive and moving. This is not condemnation. This is an invitation to wake up before the day that Allah has already sworn by arrives without warning. After exposing the hidden motives behind denial, Surah Al-Qiyamah turns the pressure higher and strips away another layer of human self-deception. It confronts the listener with a truth that is uncomfortable precisely because it feels familiar. The surah makes it clear that rejection of the hereafter is rarely about confusion or lack of understanding. It is about postponement. It is about wanting tomorrow without consequence today. The human being wants space to delay obedience, to push repentance further away, to enjoy desire without interruption. This is why the surah says that man wants to continue sinning ahead of him, not behind him. Ahead of him, meaning the intention to disobey is already planned, already anticipated, already justified internally. The denial of resurrection becomes a psychological escape route. If accountability feels distant or uncertain, then restraint feels unnecessary. This is one of the most piercing moments in the surah because it turns the spotlight inward. It does not argue theology. It questions sincerity. It suggests that deep down, many people understand the truth of resurrection, but find it inconvenient. To accept it would mean admitting that life has boundaries, that pleasure is not ownership, that freedom is not absolute. It would mean admitting that every action, including the ones no one sees, carries weight. Surah Al-Qiyamah reveals that denial is often not a conclusion reached by the mind, but a decision protected by desire. This is why reminders feel uncomfortable to those who are attached to sin. They do not disturb belief alone. They disturb lifestyle. Then comes the question that has echoed across centuries with the same tone of mockery and dismissal. When is the day of resurrection? This question is not asked with humility. It is asked with arrogance. It is asked to challenge, to provoke, to imply delay means falsehood, as if saying, if it has not happened yet, then maybe it never will. But the Quran does not respond with a date. It does not satisfy curiosity. Instead, it pulls the listener into a moment where time itself collapses. Vision becomes dazzled. Sight loses its certainty. The moon is darkened. The sun and moon are brought together. The natural order that humans rely on for stability and confidence begins to unravel. These are not poetic exaggerations. They are descriptions meant to convey disorientation, fear, and loss of control. At that moment, the human being does not ask philosophical questions. He does not argue belief. He asks a single desperate question: where is the escape? Where can I go now? This question exposes everything. It reveals that disbelief did not erase Fu. It only delayed it. When reality finally arrives, denial offers no shelter, and the answer comes swiftly and without ambiguity. There is no refuge. There is no hiding place. There is no authority that can protect you. On that day, the final destination is to your Lord. Every path, every attempt to flee, every excuse collapses into a single, unavoidable meeting. This moment is terrifying, not because of flames or punishment descriptions, but because of clarity. Illusion dies. Pretending ends. The masks people wear in life fall away completely. Power, reputation, wealth, and influence vanish instantly. The same people who once felt untouchable realize they are completely exposed. Surah Al-Qiyamah forces the listener to imagine that moment now, while imagination still serves as a mercy rather than a reality. Then the surah shifts again, not away from fear, but deeper into accountability. It explains that on that day, the human being will be informed of everything he sent forward and everything he left behind. This includes actions performed openly and privately. It includes intentions that were never acted upon and consequences that continued long after a person thought they were finished. The phrase "sent forward" refers to deeds done during life, while "left behind" refers to traces that remain, good or bad, after death. Knowledge taught, harm caused, habits normalized, influence spread. Nothing disappears, nothing is forgotten. What makes this even more intense is that the surah removes the possibility of successful self-defense. Even if the human being presents excuses, even if he argues, even if he attempts to justify himself, it will not matter. The surah states clearly that the human being is a witness against himself. This is not symbolic language. Authentic hadith explain that on the day of resurrection, the mouth will be sealed and the limbs will speak. Hands will testify to what they earned. Feet will testify to where they walked. Skin will testify to what it touched. When questioned, the person will ask how they can speak, and the response will be that Allah, who gave speech to everything, gave them speech as well. This level of accountability is overwhelming because it leaves no room for manipulation. In worldly courts, people escape through technicalities, influence, and persuasion. On that day, truth speaks for itself. The body becomes evidence. The soul becomes exposed. The record is complete. Surah Al-Qiyamah is not describing a trial that might go either way. It is describing a disclosure. Everything hidden becomes visible. Everything denied becomes undeniable. And yet, even here, there is a subtle reminder of mercy. The surah is not revealing these realities to condemn in advance, but to warn in advance. The purpose is not despair, but awakening. As long as a person is alive, the record is still being written. The limbs that will testify can still be used in obedience. The tongue that will be sealed can still seek forgiveness. The feet that will speak can still walk toward good. This is why Surah Al-Qiyamah feels heavy, but not hopeless. It presses the heart because it wants the heart to move, to change direction before the moment when movement is no longer possible. By the time these verses settle in, the listener realizes that the real shock of Surah Al-Qiyamah is not graphic imagery or dramatic threats. It is honesty. It is the refusal to allow comfortable lies. It is the way it exposes denial, delay, and self-justification with precision. It does not shout. It does not exaggerate. It simply places reality in front of the soul and leaves it there, waiting for a response. As the weight of accountability settles heavily on the heart, Surah Al-Qiyamah takes an unexpected turn that reveals something profound about divine mercy. In the midst of warnings about resurrection, exposure, and judgment, Allah addresses the Prophet Muhammad directly, instructing him not to rush the recitation of revelation out of fear of forgetting it. At first glance, this may seem like a gentle interruption, but it carries deep meaning. It shows that even while speaking about the most overwhelming realities of the hereafter, Allah pauses to reassure, protect, and care for His messenger. This moment reminds us that revelation was not delivered in an atmosphere of detachment, but within a relationship of divine guidance and compassion. Allah makes a promise that the Quran will be gathered, preserved, and recited exactly as intended. This assurance removes every burden from the Prophet's heart and places responsibility entirely with Allah. Scholars explain that this moment demonstrates that the Quran is not a product of human effort or memory, but a protected revelation. No verse was left vulnerable to loss, distortion, or forgetfulness. The same Lord who will gather bones on the day of resurrection gathered His words in this life, ensuring that guidance reached humanity intact. This connection is not accidental. The surah is quietly teaching that the one who preserves revelation is fully capable of preserving deeds, intentions, and identities until the day they are revealed. There is also a deeper message here for the listener. If Allah took responsibility for preserving His words, then guidance was never meant to be hidden or inaccessible. No one will stand on the day of judgment claiming they were not warned or that the message was unclear. The Quran was revealed carefully, protected deliberately, and explained gradually so hearts could absorb it. This moment in Surah Al-Qiyamah reminds us that divine justice is always preceded by divine clarity. Accountability comes only after guidance has been delivered fully and faithfully. Then Allah says that once revelation is complete, it will be recited and explained. This is another layer of mercy. Guidance is not only preserved in text, but clarified in meaning. The Prophet Muhammad explained the Quran through his words, actions, and character, and authentic hadith preserve that explanation for future generations. The path was not left vague. The boundaries were not left undefined. Humanity was not left to guess what Allah expects. This makes denial even more tragic because rejection is not based on absence of truth, but refusal to accept it. After establishing this foundation of guidance and mercy, the surah turns its attention back to the human heart, exposing a preference that lies at the core of most spiritual failure. Allah states that people love the immediate life and neglect the hereafter. This sentence is simple, but devastating in its accuracy. The immediate life feels real because it is visible, tangible, and urgent. Its pleasures can be touched. Its rewards arrive quickly. Its distractions are constant. The hereafter, on the other hand, requires patience, trust, and restraint. It asks the human being to sacrifice short-term satisfaction for long-term truth. This love of the immediate life does not always appear as open rebellion. Often it disguises itself as busyness, ambition, or harmless enjoyment. People convince themselves that there will be time later, that repentance can wait, that spiritual effort can be postponed. But Surah Al-Qiyamah exposes this delay as a form of neglect. When the heart becomes attached to what is immediate, it loses sensitivity to what is eternal. Prayer feels heavy, reminders feel intrusive, accountability feels inconvenient. Over time, the hereafter begins to feel abstract, while the world feels urgent and demanding. Islamic scholars explain that this verse does not condemn lawful enjoyment or worldly responsibility. It condemns imbalance. It condemns allowing the temporary to dominate the heart, while the permanent is pushed aside. The problem is not living in the world, but living for it. When dunya becomes the primary concern, the soul slowly suffocates. The self-reproaching soul grows quieter, excuses grow louder, and the thought of standing before Allah becomes something the heart avoids rather than prepares for. Surah Al-Qiyamah places this reality immediately after the reassurance about revelation to show contrast. On one side is divine effort to guide, preserve, and clarify. On the other side is human neglect driven by attachment. Allah provides light, and humans turn toward distraction. Allah offers eternity, and humans cling to what fades. This contrast is not presented with anger, but with honesty. It invites reflection rather than argument. The surah then hints at the outcome of this imbalance without fully unfolding it yet. It prepares the listener emotionally for what comes next by showing that love has consequences. What the heart prioritizes will eventually shape its fate. A heart attached to the world will struggle when the world disappears. A heart trained to think beyond the immediate will find stability when immediacy collapses. What makes this section especially powerful is how relatable it is. Every human recognizes this pull. Everyone has felt the tension between what feels good now and what is right in the long run. Surah Al-Qiyamah does not speak to angels or idealized believers. It speaks to real people with real weaknesses. It acknowledges temptation without excusing surrender. It recognizes distraction without normalizing neglect. By this point in the surah, the listener realizes that the message is not only about a future day, but about present choices. Resurrection is not just an event waiting ahead. It is a lens through which life should be lived now. The preservation of revelation proves that guidance is available. The exposure of worldly attachment proves that resistance comes from within. Between these two truths lies the test of every human life. Surah Al-Qiyamah does not ask the listener to abandon the world entirely. It asks them to stop letting the world decide what matters. It asks them to remember that immediacy is deceptive, that urgency is often artificial, and that the hereafter, though unseen, is more real than anything hands can touch. This reminder does not shout. It settles slowly, like weight on the heart, urging it to reconsider priorities before they harden into habits. In this way, the surah continues its pattern of awakening rather than overwhelming. It alternates between warning and mercy, exposure and reassurance, fear and clarity. It does not rush the heart. It presses it steadily, giving it space to respond while response is still possible. By reminding us that guidance was preserved and that attachment distorts vision, Surah Al-Qiyamah quietly asks the most important question of all. What are you truly living for, and what will remain when what you love most is taken away? As Surah Al-Qiyamah continues, it shifts from exposing inner motives and worldly attachment to revealing the visible outcome of a lifetime of choices. It describes faces on the day of resurrection, and this imagery is not poetic decoration. It is a truth that reflects what the heart carried long before that day arrived. Some faces will be radiant, calm, and filled with expectation, not because they were perfect, but because they recognized their Lord, struggled sincerely, and returned whenever they fell. These faces are not glowing due to status or achievement, but because of relief. Relief that the waiting is over. Relief that faith was not misplaced. Relief that the promises of Allah were true. These faces are described as looking toward their Lord. According to authentic Islamic belief and sound Hadith, the believers will be granted the honor of seeing Allah in the hereafter, in a manner befitting His majesty, without resemblance and without comparison. This vision is not described in physical terms because human language cannot contain it, but its impact is described clearly. It is the greatest reward, greater than gardens, greater than rivers, greater than anything imagined. The joy on these faces comes from nearness, recognition, and acceptance. It is the joy of finally arriving home after a long journey filled with doubt, effort, and restraint. In contrast, the surah describes other faces on that same day. Faces darkened, tense, weighed down by expectation of calamity. These faces already know what is coming. They do not need to be told. Regret has settled in before judgment even begins. This is not fear of the unknown. This is fear of recognition. Recognition that warnings were ignored. recognition that opportunities were wasted, recognition that denial did not erase truth, it only delayed confrontation with it. The Quran does not describe these faces as shocked or confused. It describes them as expecting devastation. That word alone carries enormous weight. It implies awareness. It implies memory. It implies that these people now fully understand what their choices meant. On that day, there is no room for reinterpretation. The world that once distracted them is gone. The arguments that once felt convincing sound hollow. What remains is the reality they avoided thinking about while it was still distant. This contrast between faces is one of the most powerful moments in Surah Al-Qiyamah because it shows that the hereafter does not begin as punishment or reward. It begins as truth. Faces reveal what hearts carried. Serenity or dread does not appear suddenly. It is the result of years of turning toward or turning away. The surah teaches that no one arrives at the day of resurrection as a stranger to their own fate. The heart already knows where it stands. Then the surah moves into one of the most personal and unavoidable scenes it describes, the moment of death. It does not describe death as dramatic or heroic. It describes it as precise, intimate, and final. When the soul reaches the collarbone and those around the dying person ask, "Who can cure him?" this is not a medical question alone. It is desperation. It is the realization that all means have failed. No treatment, no wealth, no connection can pull the soul back once Allah has decreed its departure. At that moment, the dying person understands something with absolute clarity. This is separation. This is departure. This is not sleep or rest. This is the crossing from a life of choice into a reality of consequence. Surah Al-Qiyamah says that the person realizes it is the time of parting. The word used carries finality. There is no extension, no negotiation, no second chance to return and correct what was neglected. Authentic hadith describe this moment with striking detail. For the believer, the soul is taken gently, like water pouring from a vessel, accompanied by angels of mercy. For the disbeliever or persistent sinner, the soul is taken harshly, torn away with resistance and pain. Surah Al-Qiyamah does not detail these differences here, but it points to the seriousness of the transition. Death is not neutral. It is the first unveiling. It is the beginning of either rest or regret. What makes this scene especially unsettling is how ordinary it is. There are no crowds, no announcements, no global signs, just a single human being facing the end of their allotted time. The surah reminds us that before the day of resurrection shakes the universe, death quietly shakes every individual life. No one escapes this moment, no one delays it, and no one experiences it on behalf of another. The surah then describes the body being carried, the final movements, the final helplessness. The same person who once walked confidently now relies entirely on others. The same voice that once argued now falls silent. The same body that once chased pleasure now lies still. This scene forces the listener to confront mortality without distance or abstraction. It brings the hereafter closer by showing that the path to it begins with death, not with the end of the world. And yet even here, the surah is not cruel. It is honest. It presents death not as a punishment, but as a truth that demands preparation. The shock is not that death comes, but that it comes exactly when life feels most familiar. This is why the reminders of Surah Al-Qiyamah matter now. Because when death arrives, reflection ends, intention freezes, the record closes. By pairing the description of faces on the day of resurrection with the moment of death, the surah creates a powerful connection. The face you carry into death is shaped by how you lived. The face you rise with on the day of judgment reflects what you prepared for while alive. Death is not the end of the story. It is the moment the story becomes fixed. Surah Al-Qiyamah does not aim to create fear for its own sake. It aims to restore seriousness. It reminds the listener that life is fragile, time is limited, and truth is unavoidable. The brightness or darkness of faces is not random. It is earned slowly, through choices repeated daily, through priorities set quietly, through obedience embraced or postponed. As these verses settle into the heart, the listener realizes that the surah is not describing strangers, it is describing us. It is asking us to imagine our own face, our own final moment, our own meeting, not to despair, but to prepare. Because the greatest tragedy would not be fear on the day of resurrection. It would be realizing that the warning was clear, the guidance was available, and the time to respond quietly slipped away. As Surah Al-Qiyamah nears its end, it delivers one of the most humbling reminders in the entire Quran, a reminder so simple that it dismantles arrogance without argument. Allah brings the human being back to their origin, not as an insult, but as a reality check that no one can escape. He asks whether man thinks he will be left neglected, without purpose, without return, without accountability. Then he reminds him how he began as a drop of fluid, insignificant in appearance, unnoticed, carried without choice, formed without consultation. There was no strength, no intelligence, no independence at that stage. There was only divine will shaping what would later claim confidence and control. From that drop, Allah created, proportioned, and perfected the human being, giving him hearing, sight, limbs, and awareness. Nothing was accidental. Nothing was random. Every stage followed divine order with precision. The surah emphasizes this not to describe biology, but to confront pride. If creation itself was deliberate, then existence cannot be meaningless. If the beginning was controlled, then the ending will be as well. It makes no sense to believe that a being created with such care would be abandoned without purpose or conclusion. This reminder crushes the illusion of self-sufficiency. Humans often live as if they authored their own existence, as if effort alone explains life. Surah Al-Qiyamah tears away that illusion gently but firmly. You are not consulted when you were created. You are not asked what form you preferred. You are not given a choice about your time, place, or circumstances of birth. If the beginning was entirely in the hands of Allah, then returning to Him is not an injustice, it is consistency. Allah then asks a question that leaves no room for denial. Is the one who created the first time not able to bring life again? The answer is not stated because it does not need to be. It is obvious. Resurrection is not harder than creation. Reassembling is not more difficult than originating. The only barrier is human arrogance, not divine ability. Surah Al-Qiyamah ends by placing this logic directly into the heart of the listener, not as a debate, but as an undeniable conclusion. What makes this ending so powerful is its calm certainty. There is no threat here, no dramatic description, just truth stated plainly. Allah is fully capable. Resurrection is guaranteed. Accountability is inevitable. The surah does not ask the listener to imagine impossible things. It asks them to remember what already happened. You exist, you were created, you were shaped. That alone is proof enough. As the surah closes, the tone is not chaotic or loud. It is resolved. Everything that needed to be said has been said. The excuses have been addressed. The doubts have been dismantled. The warnings have been delivered. What remains now is the choice of the listener. Surah Al-Qiyamah does not force belief. It exposes reality and leaves the response to the heart. The final impact of this surah is not fear alone, but clarity. It makes the human being see life differently. Time feels heavier. Choices feel more meaningful. Delays feel dangerous. The reminder lingers because it does not rely on emotion alone. It relies on truth that cannot be erased. You are created intentionally. You will return inevitably. Between those two moments lies the test, the shocking truth about Surah Al-Qiyamah. is not hidden knowledge or secret interpretation. It is that everything it warns about is already unfolding quietly. Every heartbeat is a step closer. Every day is a page added to the record. Every ignored reminder is a missed opportunity, and every sincere return is accepted while the door remains open. This surah does not end with despair, because despair is not from Allah. It ends with certainty. Certainty that justice will be done. Certainty that truth will be revealed. Certainty that nothing lived was meaningless. For the believer, this certainty brings comfort. For the heedless, it brings urgency. For everyone, it brings responsibility. Surah Al-Qiyamah leaves the listener standing at a crossroads, without drama, without pressure, without illusion. One path leads to preparation, humility, and return. The other leads to delay, distraction, and regret. The surah does not walk the path for you. It simply makes sure you can no longer pretend you did not know where it leads. And perhaps that is the most unsettling and merciful aspect of all. The warning is clear. The message is preserved. The reminder has reached you. What happens next is no longer hidden. It is written by the choices made from this moment forward, before the soul reaches the collarbone, before faces are revealed, before excuses fall silent, and before the meeting that Allah swore by finally arrives.